Hi Brenda, this is Jasmine from Academy of Animated Art, here to give you some feedback on this awesome shading work you've been doing. So, I pulled up the waitress's style guide as reference just to see where the style is, what I should be looking at. And let me pull up your initial render. And one, I think it's awesome. I love it is so close to the style guide, and my initial impression is, I want to get to know this waitress. I want to hear her story. Like, is that her notepad where she's writing down the orders? Overall, a great job. My initial things that I'm going to comment on today is, my first impression is that the skin here is feeling a little bit too, like the speck is just a little bit too sharp and tight. Do you see what I mean? Like, if you look at skin, and I'm looking at your style guide, like, I see she does have that kind of highlights going on, but they're more subtle, they're more broad too than what we're seeing here. It's a little bit too tight and too sharp, too bright, I would say. So I'd soften that out. Another thing is, looking at this, like, one, I love that you have the chrome ball and the gray ball there to show kind of the lighting. And what this is allowing me to do when I look at this, if you notice, it's like a very nice kind of soft lighting, nothing too harsh on this diffuse ball. But I'm really interested how you're getting so much of this sharp rim going on, especially, I mean, it's very shader specific, because we're not really seeing it too much on the shirt, but on her skin and a little bit on her hair and a little bit on pants. But I'm really concerned about the skin. Like, how is she picking up so much light here on the rim when I'm not seeing it in this diffuse ball? So this is something that's really good to look out for in this early, like, look development stage as you're working on shaders, because if we don't address this, then it's going to be problematic when you're lighting, and it's going to be harder to kind of pinpoint, like, there's something off, but there's something there. So one, I would check your shader settings. I feel like, it's almost like a facing ratio thing going on. Like, here it's just feeling too forced, especially when I'm looking at the lighting here. So check what is creating that really sharp and hot rim, and I would make it more subtle. And you wouldn't get that. You would see that, I imagine, if you put like a light right up against her as a rim, and intentionally doing that. But if for this soft lighting, it's a red flag. So definitely look into that. Another thing I'll say as I'm looking into this, when I was looking at your style guide, I really love the kind of silkiness of this tie, and I am missing it here. And it could be a combination, honestly. I'm looking at, actually, you have a closer render over here, I believe. It could be a combination of the modeling, to be honest with you, like how your reference has this kind of crinkle here in the model that we don't see in your model, so it's hard to catch those highlights. That could be one thing. But really, and I'm actually, now that I'm zooming in, I see that there could be a texture on there, which I'm not really seeing in your reference. But what I'm missing here is that silkiness. It's funny, it's like you have this kind of sharp highlights here that I'm asking you to kind of soften and make it a little broader, but it's the opposite for the tie. I want to see those kind of sharp highlights, specular hits here, as we do here in the style guide, to feel like that's a silky texture. Moving on, let's look at the shirt. I think the shirt is doing a pretty good job, and that is a nice combination of, like, not too sharp, that's soft, specularity, but I'm also feeling that sheen. I feel like you can go a little bit further with it, with the intensity of it, but overall I'm liking that. I actually had a question of what this white material was actually. Is it the same material as the black? Is it the silkiness of the tie? Because right now it's a little confusing to me, like what that material is. So once you let me know, like hone in on it a little bit. And it's like it's tricky with the white here, that you don't want it to get dirty. That's a tricky thing with white. Like you don't want it to blow out, but then you don't want it to feel dirty. And when you're doing the textures and shading, it does play kind of a big part in how it's gonna light. Of course, once you're in lighting, you can always balance it out then, because a lot of the scenarios you won't know until you're in it. But this is a good base. So that's something I look out for. Another thing I'd say is the pants. I really like, you did great detail here, kind of the distressed feel of it. Let me look at your reference. Yep, definitely distressed. Let's zoom in. And I like how you did the underside, the different color as well. I'm curious. Well, one, I guess my question is, how close do we get on her? That's a big thing when you're shading, actually. Like, if you know how close to camera the character is going to be, or how far away the character is going to be, it can really help focus you on what to work on. Because, for example, I asked that because as I'm looking at this, I was like, oh, it would be nice to feel a little bit more detail here, kind of like how you would in pants in general. It's funny, these are covered up, but you know what I mean. It's kind of falling, like you feel a little bit of a seam here that I'm not feeling. And from far away, it probably wouldn't make a big difference. From close up, it feels like, oh, it's a little jarring. So depending on where this lays in your shot, like if you're seeing it really close up, then I would invest in, kind of creating a darker seam here, just so it feels like there's more definition there, a little bit less CG. And now that I'm looking at it, let's look at the shoes. At first impression, I was like, oh, the shoes are so clean. I always want to like dirty shoes up, but I'm looking at let's look at your reference. Zoom out. There we go. And these are like the whitest shoes ever. So yes, definitely matching the reference here, which is totally cool. I like how you have a different texture on here, I can tell. And I think it's working really well. I mean, my initial thing after you do a clean pass is to kind of like, dirty it up. But that being said, that might not be the style that you want. So if you want this kind of more clean style, then definitely go for that. Now I'm looking at this. I feel like the buttons feel a little bit too flat and matte. I would check that. I would probably add a little bit of like highlight on there to catch it. I think that'd be a fun little detail. The pencil and the pad are looking pretty good. The pencil, the eraser tips looking really saturated to me. I don't have a eraser in front of me, but it feels very like hot pink, where I feel like erasers are usually like more of a peachy dull color. But that's a very minor thing. And let me see, I think we're all good. Like the hair is looking good. I like how you have a sheen on it already. And let me look at your reference here. I will say, let's go back. In the reference, after seeing it, I do feel like they're like kind of more broader highlights. And yours are more very tight. You can play around with this. I like kind of play around with a slightly broader highlight and see how you feel about that. Because as I like I said, here it's more like broad, here it's more like broad as well. So definitely look into that. And yeah, I love the eyes, by the way. I feel like for some reason this eye is not, I'm not seeing this nice dark detail around the iris that I am here. I'm not seeing it here for some reason, and that's kind of interesting. Is it the refraction? What's going on there? I would look into that, because you can tell, like, that's just such a nice depth. Like, it adds so much depth to the eye, and then we lose it here. So look at what's going on and why do we lose it there. It almost looks like it's the angle and the refraction going on, but take a look and see if we can get that detail back. Yeah, overall, great job. I've talked too long. This is why I don't do as many videos. I feel like I just could go on and on. But I can't wait to see your updates. In the meantime, have a great day and happy lighting, or shading in this case. Bye.